Hi, and welcome to another session here live with us at Man Machine. My name is Adrian Patterson, and I'm an application engineer on the MFG team here at Man Machine. And we're going to be talking about Vault PLM. Now, we're going to be talking about the licenses. We're going to be talking about what kind of products come with it and how we can best utilize these new licenses that we've got to give absolutely everything that you guys need to do better product design and manufacturing. All right, so without any further ado, let's dive right in. Alrighty then. So this might seem a bit unconventional, but the first thing I'm going to do is just go through Vault Professional. Now, if my target audience here is correct, and I suspect it's correct, most of you already have Vault Professional implemented. If you haven't, this is kind of your side to see what Vault does and how it kind of works. For those of you who already have Vault Professional, I will keep it brief. So let's dive into what Vault does. So Vault Professional is top tier in terms of the data management side for Autodesk Inventor, as well as other Autodesk products. There's a good reason that it ships with Inventor, and us as application engineers recommend some version of Vault for data management of Inventor files. It's because it is best in class. It is going to get the data managed in such a way that you don't end up with broken links and annoying files having to be found and sorted out and rebuilt, because anyone who's done that knows what a pain that is. It is soul destroying as a designer to have to go and redo work which has already been done just because the data management system couldn't handle what you were throwing at it. So Vault Professional, in a nutshell, very quickly, is a data management system where I can go and browse on this side. You can see all of my folders and the environments that I've essentially got available to me. So I've gone and set up a demo for us on this one here. So you can see we've got this file over here inside of that folder called VIMEC ATV. And I can look at the history of this file, how many times it's been checked in, how many times it's been checked out, who's been checking it in and out, what comments they've been using. And yes, those of you who know me as a Vault administrator know I am quite particular about the comments. And if we look at the users section over here, you can see all of the children that this particular file might be using. So not only is it giving me the ability to manage my Inventor files, but also look at some of the history and some of the relationships that these files have inside of Vault, allowing me to better manage this data. Now, it could be as simple as I want to go and change this particular file or something to do with it. So I can go right-click on it and say, go to folder. And it's going to take me to that folder in the Vault exactly where I've been trying to look. So going back to that. I also have the Where Used tab, which shows me any parent relationships that I might have. So maybe not a great example there, but let's go to folder there. And if I go to the Where Used, you can see that the parent of that is in there, and you can see who's created it and when. And it was created by the man who is currently off camera in that direction. I'll just point that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and have a look at some of the other things that we've got access to. So all of these files have properties which are associated with them, and these properties are mapped inside of your Inventor files. Either custom iProperties or standard properties get mapped into Vault, and this is completely customizable. And we would then control these files with, say, for example, a lifecycle. So I'm not going to be going through too much of a lifecycle, but I would change the state and work it through a series of states until it's released. Now, at each of those states, it has different security permissions, different access, different controls, and it might have some properties automated depending on how far you've taken it with this Vault Professional route. So on the top end of the scale of Vault users, we find that companies who have a job processor or even a third-party job processor with custom scripts involved might be populating properties based on those states, sending out email notifications, stopping certain things from happening, certain automations happening at other points in time. It could be very wide and broad in terms of what we're talking about. So I have seen everything from Excel documents being generated out of change orders through to email notifications if someone's not allowed to do something and attempted to. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is move on to the next section inside of Vault. And some of these, if I go back to that ATV that I was looking at there, you can see that this icon here shows me I have an item associated with it. Now, an item is another thing inside of Vault. A good way to describe it is kind of like an envelope. It takes a whole bunch of data and contains it in one place. We can then use this to either export this data out or to manage the bill of materials for this, or keep kind of related documents together without them being in the same folder location inside of the Vault. So going to the item master, I can go and find this particular item, which I should have done this from the other side. Sorry. So you can see we've got an item there. I'm just going to go to item, open that item there. You can see there is the item related to it. And we can see the same kind of information that we saw before. We can see general information about the associated files, what the history of that item has been, what its bill of materials might look like. And those of you who are using items in your Vault Professional, this is mainly the biggest reason you might want to use items, is because it allows us to go and do bill of materials and export those bill of materials and manage these items in such a way that it then pushes itself onto other systems, such as ERP, or hold that thought because we're getting there. And you can see other relationships and associated files, etc. in here too. Now, the third thing that gets used quite a lot with Vault is change orders. Now, change orders allows us to go and take a file and move it through quite a regimented process, and this is honestly one of the biggest critiques of the system, is it is a little too regimented and too static and not configurable enough for some people. However, it does work, and this system works very well in terms of managing where files are in a change order. So that particular workflow looks like this for a change order. Now, this is not something we can really customize other than adding another check state into here, but you've got routing groups of people, and these people in the routings would essentially have the rights to move things at various different states in this life cycle, controlling who's got what, and all the while filling in comments. This allows us to work together as a team. This works particularly well for designers. So designers working together as a team to work through changes that might need to be approved or gone through, etc. So I said I'd keep it brief. So there is our brief introduction. Vault Professional. And I'm going to move on again. And now that we've completed that, I'm going to start talking about what is PLM. Okay. Now, PLM, Product Lifecycle Management, allows us to do a lot more. So your Vault PLM licenses, just to explain how this works, contains a Vault Professional, it contains a Fusion Manage, and it also contains another PLM product called Upchain. Now, at this point in time, Upchain has not taken off in the same way that we have seen Fusion Manage and Vault take off. So for the purposes of what I'm going to be talking about today, it's going to be largely ignored. It does exist, and it is there. And if you're looking for a cloud PLM, PDM solution from the beginning, that is where you should look. However, we're going to be focusing on the Fusion Manage side today. So Product Lifecycle Management, what is it doing? It is managing everything from introducing new products to maybe a better change management system. Remember, I said earlier that a lot of customers find those ECOs to be a little bit restrictive. We've got BOM management, we've got ideas management, we've got supply chain management. In fact, what PLM and particularly Fusion Manage specializes in is taking those processes that you are currently working in. Most of you already at least have one of these in mind, which is in Excel or is on a physical sheet of paper, or is a Word document that gets passed from person to person, or is dealt with via email and should be a more formalized process. And it gives us a platform to go and automate and control these processes in a very precise way. So what are the top factors that companies tend to look at before they start going down that PLM route? And they're looking at improving productivity and spending less time redoing the same things, or having to fix things, or having to kind of go through 7 different processes at the same time. So improving ease of collaboration. We kind of want to have teams across our organization working together. And what these PLM products do, particularly Fusion Manage, is very good at including other teams. I've got customer examples where we've now got 4 or 5 different teams collaborating together in one environment and working through various different things. I'll get to what some of these terms mean in a second. They want to reduce development cost. Obviously, the lower that development cost is, the better it is when it gets to market, the less you have to make up in terms of sales, and it means that you have more profit at the end of it. Adopting industry best practices has been one that has been rising for a while. We've got plenty of customers out there. When we meet them, the first thing they say is, how are my competitors doing it? What is everyone else doing? What is the best system I can do or put in place to manage this kind of data? That's pretty common. And reducing time to market means that we can get products out of our shop and out of our R&D processes and start manufacturing them and selling them and actually making a profit from these products quicker. That is what the goals and what are the big factors that tend to drive people towards manufacturing, towards PLM. So some of these figures I found a little bit scary, and I'm going to be honest, it is scary. So 2 months per year is wasted by engineers looking for product data. Whether that is information on a product, whether that is versions of product, whether it's, hang on, is this the latest version of what I'm trying to work on? Which one should I be working with? 2 months a year. And that is insane. You're paying someone for 12 months a year work and you're only getting 10. So let's move on to the next one. 10 systems that an engineer might use to make one change. Now, there's probably people out there who are going, no, never, 10, no, not going to happen. But what about Teams? What about email? What about that SharePoint file that you've got over there? What about that Word document you were using to log this? What about the Excel document that's controlling the whole processes for the quality department? It adds up quickly. 83% of new products miss their cost targets in terms of development and to market. And that's insane. That is nuts. That means that either we're terrible at estimating this, could be, or it just rolls out of control and it takes longer and things go wrong and we have to fix it and those costs just go through the roof. And 79% of new products miss their launch date. Can you imagine how big that is? If you are in product development these days, 79% of these projects don't go ahead on time. And this is all sourced. In fact, if you ask us for these slides, I know I'm kind of blocking it a little bit in terms of my view here, but at the bottom of that screen, I think Rob's going to turn it off for me there. There we go. You can actually see where this information is sourced from. And it is all independent studies conducted in such a way to kind of give you validated data. And moving on to people, more than 40% of companies are reporting that they've got issues with collaboration. Now, that could be internal, that could be external. Talking to other departments, if you've got the quality department in your company, for example, and you're trying to move through a quality process with them, get this new product design off the ground, that is crazy. It's nuts. All of these figures made me angry when I started realizing how inefficient we were. We've end up with so many companies, and change is the one thing which people tend to struggle with the most. We've got 50%, 57% of companies reporting workflow challenges in terms of controlling change management and release. Okay? That, by the way, has gone up 14% since 2015. I suppose in 2015 we were more manual process based, we were more Excel based. That was bleeding edge for a lot of people. Now we've got this, which is even more, it's just even more. I don't even know how to put that into words. It's just more tools for us to go and use, and it's just brilliant. So we want to try and keep our data in one place. And 1 in 3 companies say that they don't like how they're controlling data, how it is shared between teams or departments, and how it's accessed and how it's controlled, and can you keep that data in the right place so it doesn't end up in the wrong hands? Because obviously it's also about your security, it's your IP. You're creating this information so that you can make money out of it, to manufacture these products, to get your product out the door, right? And unless you've got good systems controlling and accessing it, things can go wrong. Right. The important figure I wanted to talk about on this one is 48% finding the right information. Do you know how many customers I've been to where I look at their vault and they've got 6 versions of the same file? And that's a problem. We need to get it down to be more streamlined and work more efficiently. So here is a diagram that shows a typical company. Okay. Now, there's plenty of things going on here. In fact, I believe this slide is meant to be described as chaos. So you can see the different departments there in terms of procurement, manufacturing, quality, engineering, and how they're sending data to each other. Is it an STL file? Is it Outlook? Is it being emailed as a PDF? Is it being walked across physically on a flash drive to that department and copied? Is it being used on a company server? Are they copying the data and sharing it that way? Are you using SharePoint to control this data? Who's in control of it? Who's not in control of it? How is this set up? So it does become very chaotic very quickly. And I can say from first-hand experience, this greatly represents the company where I did the most amount of design work. This is exactly what it looked like. This is also known as the throw it over the wall approach, where we end up with engineering saying, okay, I'm now done with this design, finished. You guys deal with the rest of it. And now we've got supply chain who needs to go and sort out this manufacturing, quality, and service, and sorting out all of that information later down the line. Notice how far down that process the MFG handoff happens. Okay? At that point in time, the design's done. Now, how do we get this to be better? Well, first of all, by the way, this results in high life cycle change costs. So if you've got an error and it's picked up later down the line, it results in more costs trying to fix that. The earlier we can move that, the lower those costs are going to be because less has been done when we pick up those errors. Getting people involved earlier is key. And that is where this PLM side comes in. And that is what Vault PLM is all about. Trying to use Fusion Manage on top of Vault to control these processes and things that we kind of need to control in a much tighter and regimented way. So let's talk about how that actually happens. Well, by involving these departments early on. So we've got the supply chain having a look at, these parts need to be sourced. We've got quality saying, oh, hang on, that might be a problem. Or we can involve quality earlier in the process and say, you know what, I'm not quite sure about this design. Is this going to meet the standard that I need to produce? We can get them involved at that point in time. And that is where Autodesk PLM comes into play. So off the shelf, we're going to talk about the templates in a second, but we're looking at BOM management, quality management, some ideas, new product introductions, supply chain management. And if you are looking at the screen thinking, yeah, that's all fine and dandy, those are lovely processes, but what about this process that isn't on that list? Well, the great thing about it is that we can replicate any process you'd like to. Maybe you don't have one of these processes that's off the shelf. Maybe it requires a custom environment and a custom thing created for you so that it does exactly the process that you might like it to do. That's completely possible. That's not a problem. The whole idea with these templates, which I'm going to get onto, is that these are the quick wins. These are the ones that you can implement immediately as soon as you've got access to what we call a tenant. Now, I'm going to be talking about what a tenant means in a second, but here is a list of all of the environments available currently which are set up for Fusion Manage, and they can simply be installed on your tenant, and you would be up and running. Yeah, you can still tweak it, you can still change it, you can configure it in terms of how it's going to work, but it represents the base of how we start with this particular process. And when we look at what comes with a Fusion Manage tenant out of the box, this is the map of what we're currently looking at. Now, for those of you who haven't looked at these before, you might be thinking, that's a bit chaotic, what's going on here? Well, what it's doing is it's showing you all of the interlinked processes between various different departments. So we might have product portfolio management where we've got different departments working on things, and that is one process. We've got product ideation, which is another process which links into product development and kind of goes to product portfolio management as well. On the far right of the screen, we've got our change management process, which not only controls things that already exist as items, but can also control other things as well. I've got a company involved with Fusion Manage right now who is controlling a huge amount of things with their change management process. And it's not only to do with designers, it's to do with anything in terms of their manufacturing process. If they need a change, it goes through change management. It starts out as a change request and moves on to a change order. New product introduction allows us to formally outline the processes that our new products need to go through, making sure they've got the right requirements, all of the documents are there, everything is completed as it should be before we end up going to the next stage. This stops us going back and forth quite as much in that process. We have the ability to do supply chain collaboration. Now, I will caveat this one with, if you are doing supply chain collaboration and you're dealing with your suppliers, you probably will need the enterprise license, which allows you to have your suppliers being brought into your environment and working on the same system as you. Okay. But that is something you can discuss with us if that is a case which is relevant to your business. And we've got quality management, which gives us a good framework for being able to do things like RMAs, corrective preventative actions, claims in terms of that, non-conformances. We can do site inspections and quality inspections. We've got inspection plans. We can go as far away as saying, we want to go and we've got this quality inspection plan, therefore this measurement needs to be done, this one needs to be done, this one needs to be done, etc. Now, so I mentioned earlier something called a tenant. Now, how Fusion Manage works is we've got a data center, right? This exists either in the US or in the EU. By default, it's in the US unless you tell it otherwise. And it consists of a data center with your servers in, there's your hardware infrastructure, and then we've got our software infrastructure that sits on top of that, and we've got this web application because it's going to be hosted live on the web. And inside of that top box, we've got our tenants. Now, the tenant represents your environment inside of Fusion Manage. Okay? All of the data, all of the environments, all of the processes, all of the scripts, all of the data that you are kind of consuming and inputting is being put inside of that tenant. So what does that tenant contain? Well, we're going to move on to the next one. There you can see that little blue box that we were looking at contains a security layer, and then it's got a services layer, and on top of that, it's got its workspaces. Now, the workspaces represent different environments that might be used inside of Fusion Manage. This could be your change management, your change orders, it could be your change requests, it could be your cappers, it could be your processes and your tasks, which might be needed for those. There's plenty of environments that get created inside of a Fusion Managed tenant. It's always more than you think it's going to be, but each of those are contained within a little box. And rather importantly, when we look at it from a user perspective, this is what it might look like. Inside of the new product introduction environment, we can see that there's so many different environments and different places where we can go and put that data. Okay? These all link together and the data goes between them, and that is controlled through a scripting environment, which we'll get to in a second. So, the workspace components, each of those workspaces consists of behaviors, records, and a configuration. So the behaviors is what happens to this when it moves in the lifecycle. What happens when I go and change this state to this state? Does it do this automation? Does it change that? We've got the data, the actual record data, which is included in there, which all of the fields that you can populate in there and configure in there. And your configuration on top of that consists of a main form. You've got a life cycle. You have the ability to control tasks in terms of like a grid system. You've got bill of materials in certain environments like items. You can link things together. You can join all of this together. You can tell it, in this field, I want to include items which come from this environment. And it's possible to go and configure that. So this is kind of what I was talking about in the last slide there, is we've got relationships between various different workspaces. If we have a task which is due, for example, for a change order, that task, once complete, will notify the change order that it is then done, and it marks that task off the list. And once that list equals 0, a lifecycle move might happen. This is actually something that happens inside of the change orders. So without boring you to death with more PowerPoint, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to dive right into Fusion Manager. So bear with me, I'm just going to change my screen here, and let's go ahead and have a look at Fusion Manager. So this is the home screen of Fusion Manage. Now, inside of here, I have a couple graphs and charts which I can set up here, and I can see things such as, oh, I don't know, project task by priority, and I can see there's 3 that are low. I can go and see, 1 that's low, and then we've got 1 that's normal. You can see that we've got our problem report sources and where they might come from, and that's one customer at that point and other. We can see that we've got planned effort versus, all of your various different projects and how that might work, your project budgets, how it's comparing to the actual by comparison to the planned cost, etc. We can even see our suppliers by type. These are all completely configurable. So if I went and tried to modify this, you can see all of these charts are available for me to go and add. Now, as you add more environments into your Fusion Manage, as you add more of those templates that I showed you earlier, these charts would increase. It is also possible to go and create your own charts off of data that exists inside of Fusion Manage. All of the data you put in here is then sortable, searchable, filterable, and exportable as whatever reports you might like it to be. I'll get onto reports when we get there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to start looking at the template library and what is available to the average person. I showed you with this slide earlier some of those that are available, and if we go to the template library over here, you can see that all of those are available for me to go ahead and install. Now, I will mention the ones that are marked preview, you guys would not be able to see in your tenants. I can only see those because I am part of the resellers, and these are available for me to go and test and see and feedback about how they're performing, etc. But if I wanted to go and install customer management, for example, I could go to customer management and simply click install, and it would install a huge amount of workspaces, categories, pick lists, roles, anything that might be needed for that bit of information. And if I wanted to see what it's going to look like, I could simply go and open a screenshot, and this is going to give me a guide onto what these different environments might look like. So the main thing that we showed in terms of that diagram, remember I showed how the different workspaces kind of interact together, is under product development. And if I went to items, for example, we can see that we have some items which have been synchronized into here. And you can see if I went to this one over here, and I opened up that supercar driver seat 1000, that I've got a particular icon which is associated with it. I have certain files that are associated with it, as well as related attachments. So there's all the parts that might make up this particular one. And if I wanted to, I could go and simply click on this and open up this DWF inside of Fusion Manage. Now, Autodesk's web viewer is quite well known at this point in time, and it's being used in quite a few places. So it isn't anything different from that. It is the standard web viewer. But it still allows someone who is logged into Fusion Manage with no installation to go ahead and have a look at these designs in the organized system that they are being contained within. So if I go to the Bill of Materials tab, I have the ability to do Bill of Material management inside of Fusion Manage. So when I upload that data, it's going to come with certain Bill of Material information, which then gets put into Fusion Manage, which we can then go and control in here and export, say for example. So if we wanted to, it's as simple as exporting this to Excel. By the way, it is also possible to go and push this data out in other formats and in other ways, and we can kind of get it to do what you'd like. So it depends kind of what you'd like this bill of material to do. So there aren't any related processes with this particular one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my home page, and I'm going to go and open up another process which I have prepped for us. By the way, here is my outstanding work. So it does send email notifications when things need to be done. It does tell me what work is outstanding and waiting for me. And you can see this is everything from a kappa through to a change request through to quality inspections and non-conformances. So this is a fairly broad range in terms of what I'm apparently responsible for doing, but it would be more focused in your companies depending on how you implement it. So under this bookmarked items, I've gone and saved this particular change request for us. So if I go to this change request system, I can see I have all of this information that has been filled out for me for that change request. And I can see all of that information there has been created from a mechanical change template, which dictates which people are going to be doing it, what process it needs to follow, who needs to be notified, etc. We use these templates to kind of control how something behaves, because not all change requests are the same. We might need to have it behave in a particular way for the mechanical ones and in a particular way for the electrical ones. We might need to notify different people based on which one is being selected. So those templates are used to control that. We can have a look at any images that might have been uploaded for this. We can see the status of this particular change request. Is it new? Is it currently being revised? Is it with the change control board? Or has it progressed already to the change order state? So with regards to that process, let's have a look at the workflow that this change request might actually go through. Now, these workflows are completely customizable. This one is off the shelf. This is a change request system off the shelf as you might get when you get access to your Fusion Manage tenant. And you can see that it starts at a create section, moves to review. We can go through a quality control board review, change control board review. And let's say, for example, there's 4 people in that change control board review, all of which who need to sign off on this change. So it uses kind of like a voting system. If all of them click approve, it moves on to the change order process. If one of them clicks return, it'll go back to the review and impact analysis stage. Now, once it moves to the change order in progress state, in the background there's a script that goes and triggers a change order with all of the information from my change request. And that stays in this change order in progress state until such time as that change order that was generated triggers another script, which then goes ahead and closes this change request off. So you can see these processes are all interlinked and very important. And we can see a full workflow history over here. So if I was to move this one, let's go ahead and make a change to this change request. I'm going to go and edit this, and you can see that I end up with more fields that I can go and change. So let's go and select which product is going to be affected by this. So I'll go and choose this belt conveyor. If I go and have a look at the affected items, I can go and choose which item is actually on there. So products being one thing, items being another. Your items tend to be what's synchronized from your Vault, and your products are part of your product management system. So not CAD management or not data from design, but rather what products are we trying to sell? How does that break down? And obviously those products contain that CAD information. The affected quantity, let's go and say that there's 2 of them that's affected. And if we wanted to, we could go and add an image. I'm not going to do that now, but we'll go ahead and click save. Now, I could either go to this workflow actions menu up at the top, which is showing me all of my options in terms of moving in a workflow, or I could simply go to the workflow tab and click on which one I'd like to do. So depending on whether you're more visual or you understand exactly what the process is, you can go ahead and just choose whichever one you'd like to move. So let's go and submit this one for a review, and I'll go and say that it is ready for review. Okay, go ahead, click confirm, and it'll go ahead and move this in the life cycle to the next state. So let's say, for example, I wanted to go ahead and add some tasks to this. So under task planning, you'll notice that as part of that template that we selected, it's gone and added a task, identify and assess the impact of change. But it needs some editing in terms of creating this, and we could add a second one if we wanted. Let's go and edit this. So under the description, I can go and type whatever I'd like in here. I could go and assign it to a particular user. I'll go and assign it to myself because I don't feel like being cruel to any of my team. If you're watching, you're welcome. And I'll go ahead and make myself the reviewer as well. I can go and say that this is engineering activity. Okay. And I need to go and assign a target start date and a target complete date. And when I go and click save, it's going to fill out the rest of that information in here. Some of these fields are calculated for us, such as the days remaining and the target effort, which we're thinking it's going to take us to do this, right? So if I now go ahead and move in my workflow, I could go as far as initiating tasks. Ooh, that is not available. Apparently, I might not have the right rights to do that. So my example here might be a little bit flawed, but you understand my point. Once I'd pushed this to perform tasks, what it would have done is created the task items and created something in the schedule. Okay, so that is one environment which would have pushed to another. Right. So I'm going to move on at that point, and let's go and have a look at some of the reporting tools that we've got access to as part of this. Now, if I go to reporting, you can see that by default, I have all of these reports which are available to me. So let's say, for example, I wanted the change request approval status of all of the change requests in there. I could go and ask for this data as an HTML. I could go and ask for this data as an Excel. I could ask for this as a chart. So I can go and click on that, and it'll generate all of that information. So currently, they're 100% approved. Okay. Maybe not the greatest data to go and have a look at, but I'm sure we'll find one that is. So there we go. So product classes by product line. We can go and see we've got 3D printers, we've got building systems, we've got material handling, we've got package systems. And you can see that we've got product classes, so material handling 2, we've got all of these various different products and how they're broken up in terms of our data. Now, if I wanted to, product lines by class, have I lost it? I have. I could go and click on this data and it will run this report as HTML, for example, and you can see all of that information gets put into a chart, which I can then just go and, not a chart, a table, which I can then go and print. If I wanted to, I could export this by XLS, and we can then open this up in Excel if we wanted to. We'll see whether this opens up on the right screen. It does not. That's fine. That's part of the course. Yeah, man. It doesn't appear to have opened up correctly. There we go. There we go. So there is the data that we exported by Excel, which would allow us to go and manipulate and create our own reports if we still wanted to do some of this via Excel. Now, I wanted to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain about what is going on and how this might work. So what I've gone and done is I've opened up the change request workspace in the administration section. And you can see that our entire forms are built out of these various different fields. Now, these fields can consist of various different data types, which we can then choose. We can dictate how wide that field might be. We can go and choose whether it's default value, whether it's got any validation. If we went and had a look at some of the more complex things, let's say, for example, we didn't want something which is going to be filled in, but we wanted something which is going to show us where in a process something might be. Let's go and find one here. So sourcing cast required approvers, there's multiple in there. statistics and KPI, completion dates. Why is it whenever I start looking for these things, you can never find the exact field you're looking for? Approval status, there we go. So if I go and click on this pencil for approval status, what I wanted to show you is that these fields can be computed as well. So we can go and write little lines of code which allow us to go and tell Fusion Manage what we'd like to display. So what this is saying is when a particular case is satisfied, it'll say cancelled and it'll put it in white. Or when another one is there, it's going to say approved. Depending on where in that life cycle it is, it's then going to pick up what that field should show. So you can have it representing stamps and things. This is not something that you would necessarily be modifying when you're editing your particular items inside of it, but it's something which would show you what information is being displayed where and what state it might be in. And if I click cancel, whoops, let's go back to that. Administration, workspace manager, just shortcut the error that I knew was going to happen there. And we'll go to change requests. And you can see that we have the ability to change what the grid tab might be displaying. We can go and change all of these fields in the same way that we were changing those other fields. And importantly, when we go to the workflow, we can see we can completely customize this workflow and change everything from what happens in these various different states, whether it's locked, whether it's managed, to who can move it in various different state changes. And you can see this as part of the additional owners or the owner. So only the owner or the additional owners would be able to move it from create through to review. Okay? And we can actually see what was maybe stopping me from causing that initiate tasks. And I can almost guarantee you it was the coordinator. I almost guarantee you I'm not listed as a coordinator on that item, which is why I couldn't go and initiate those tasks. I can edit the item, but I can't push it in that state in the lifecycle. So I had done as much as I'm allowed to do by Fusion Manage in its current configuration, would be allowed to do. Right. So what's controlling all of these fields in the background? How does the automatic things happen? And the answer to that is this system configuration. If I go to scripting, sorry, a slight issue there. If we go to the scripting configuration, you can see that we have a whole heap of scripts. Now, none of these are customized. All of these came with the Fusion Manage tenant and are set up based on these environments. These are installed based on the templates that you're choosing. So if you install one of those templates, you don't have to worry about having to automate it afterwards. It's automated as part of the installation process. Now, these scripts consist of various different functions. So we have condition scripts, we've got validation scripts, we've got action scripts. So a condition script wouldn't show me a lifecycle change unless certain conditions were completed. A validation script wouldn't allow me to move in a lifecycle until I'd actually, or it would reject that lifecycle change unless I had something completed. And it would tell me what's missing before I can go and do that. So say, for example, in a change order, you have a particular field that needs to be filled out before it can go to that review state. Well, if it's not filled out, it won't allow the owner to actually proceed with that change order or change request until they've filled out that field. And then we've got our action scripts. Now, our action scripts allow us to go and automate various different things inside of our processes. So, for example, for the change request one, if I went inside of here, I could go and edit what these scripts are doing. And you will notice this is usually based on lifecycle transitions. So particularly with the workflow actions scripts that we have over here, it is mainly based on when this workflow change happens, I want the following things to happen. Okay. And it might be as simple as I'd like to change the step from 1 to 0 because it starts at 1. Okay. So when it's cancelled, step equals 0. And that step is a field which calculates other things, which is automating other things. And you can see how this can snowball and build. The idea behind this is that you end up with a concise system which gives you exactly the processes that you want to go and manage. Now, if you are sitting here wondering, that's great, but how do I get my specific environment into Fusion Manage? The answer to that is you contact us. So this is a service that we actually provide, is we go and sit down with customers, we go through meetings where we discuss how this should behave and how this should work, and changes that they might like to make to their existing systems. And we help them implement these changes, whether that's through services or if it's a quick change, we're just going to help you guys do it. So if this is something that you would like, I do highly recommend you contact us because I almost guarantee you, those of you who are sitting on Vault Professionals, and yes, there's a lot of you out there, this is going to add a lot of processes to your workflows and allow you to control so much more of your design processes and business processes through this. Stop relying on Excel, stop relying on SharePoint quite as much to control all of those Excel things that we're manually doing. Put in place a rigid system, or even not so rigid system. Put in place a system which allows us to track these processes. Yeah. So let's jump back into the slides for a second here. So, some of the benefits that we have of cloud collaboration: we want to save time, we want to improve our quality, we want to reduce costs, and we want to increase productivity. All four of these things, if you are not thinking about changing this in your business, then you're letting it sit. This is perpetual chasing in terms of what a company should be thinking out in terms of manufacturing products. We're chasing this constantly. So let's talk about saving time. So we currently have Vault Pro, a lot of you guys do, and now we want to look at implementing all of these processes. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, that's great. How do I get the information which exists in my Vault Pro to start talking to the things inside of my Fusion Manage? And the answer to that is there is no Autodesk tool which connects these two directly. So we need to rely on third-party tools. And it's actually where ManaMachine can come and help, is because we have a tool called PDM Booster, which allows us to go and link our Fusion Manage tenants with our Vault professionals. And this means that we can take information on a case-by-case basis, although it's usually either files or items, and more likely items than files, from our Vault into our Fusion Manage, and we can then use these processes to control that data. Now, those items inside of Fusion Manage often have things like thin client links or even thick client links, which link back to our Vault Professional. So if we have Vault installed on our machine, we can simply click on that inside of Fusion Manage and it takes us right to that Vault Professional thing. Okay. Now, some of you might be thinking, that's great, I can see where these processes for Fusion Manage can help me, but what about my existing ERP system? What about the processes I've already got in place? And that is where we can talk about connecting it to your ERP. It is possible because Fusion Manage has an open API. We have the ability to use REST API to go and script connections from Fusion Manage to your ERP system. This allows the processes inside of Fusion Manage to start driving other processes inside of your business that you might already have established. Processes you wouldn't want to necessarily move into Fusion Manage. You still want to keep in the background, because they run, I don't know, your planning system for your shop floor, or your logistics, or maybe it's your purchasing department is running completely on it. This allows us to go from one to the other. So, connected data and processes is the name of the game today. And we're talking completely about Vault PLM. And what I would like you guys to go and do is go and have a think. Look at the processes that you've got in your companies and think, how could this be better? And if the answer isn't Fusion Manage, I'll be quite surprised. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That is all I had planned on doing with you today. So, awesome. It has been great to stream with you guys live, and I will see you guys again for the next one.